Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Let's welcome some freedom fighters to the stage. Masih, Alinejad, Carolina Barrero, Leopoldo, López.
Thank you.
Please have a seat. Let me turn to you, Carolina Barrero, someone who was forced out of Cuba 4 years ago. An art historian, a writer, political activist, from the San Isidro movement to the protests across the country. We've heard Cuba is next, but what does it mean to really turn political pressure into a democratic transition in which the Cuban people have a say in their future?
Let me start by saying Cuba is not just an isolated small island in the Caribbean. Cuba is the regional matrix for authoritarianism. We sometimes get trapped in every conversation about Cuba in this bilateral logic. Cuba, United States, sanctions or no sanctions, engagement or isolation. But all of these are traps and are actively misleading logic. What is behind Cuba is, the intelligence that they have exported to countries such as Venezuela and Nicaragua. For years, since the 60s, the Cuban intelligence has been trying to destabilize the region. The Mayo invasion in Venezuela happened in the 60s, so there is record from almost 70 years ago, and it was a military invasion led by Fidel Castro. Also, what happened in Nicaragua, the consolidation of power of the Ortega Murillo regime after 2018, mainly, it was crafted and designed by the Cuban intelligence. The Sandinistas were trained in the 80s. And also, actually, Maduro was trained in the school of the Communist Party between 86 and 87. Also, Colombian guerrillas, FARC, ELN, and others. So we are not talking really about a very small, naive island to the mercy of the embargo sanctions. We are talking about a regime that actually have imperialistic ambitions all over the region. As I said, it is the regional matrix for authoritarianism in all of the Americas, but not only. If you remember in the 80s in Africa, Operación Carlota, Cuba regime sent 400,000 men to fight in Angola on Russia's side, by the way. And more recently, and this is another layer, in the war against Ukraine, also on the side of Russia. Cuba is sending, or at least facilitating, the militarily strategic recruitment of young men inside Cuba and in Europe, in Serbia and Moscow. Cubans do not need visa to travel to Russia, so they recruit Cubans over there over economical distress, yes, but mostly they are misled, they are deceived. They are said that they will go to do reconstruction jobs in retaken cities. This signals an aggression to Europe. Cuba's being part of the direct aggression to Ukrainian men and women and Ukrainian citizens, and therefore Europe. So I wanted to start by that because when we think about what's going on and how tensions has increased between Cuba and the US, we need to understand the true nature of the Cuban regime and how it has always presented itself as the victim when it's really the perpetrator.
And how do Cubans themselves use this political pressure, the spotlight on even the report that you've put out, spotlighting the atrocities of Cubans in the Ukraine-Russia war? How do you translate this into the Cuban people having a voice to shape a transition in their country?
This is very important because when you see media, what you always see is what the executive order by Donald Trump, what if there are planes surveilling around the island, and all of these tensions, negotiations first, and now a possible invasion. But you don't see in the media what is happening inside Cuba and the fight that the Cuban young men, the Cuban women, and the Cuban people are given which is a big fight. Recently, last month in Ciego de Ávila, in Morón, there was an amazing protest with hundreds of people on the streets in the night. They went to the headquarters of the Communist Party. I'm sure many of you remember what is to live in the communist country, in Eastern Europe, in Baltic countries, Czech Republic, not so long ago. Sometimes Europe forgets this was not so long ago, and it can happen again, what it is to live under a totalitarian regime. So for you to go out at the middle of the night, hundreds of people, and put fire to the headquarters of the Communist Party is not a small thing to do.
It's incredible.
It is incredible. And this just happened last March, and that is not in the news. My other important message was to mention this here so that you know, even though it's not reported enough, the Cuban people are given the fight for freedom. They are not just waiting for what Europe or the White House do or not do. This is important. This is important as well. But we are not just waiting for that